leaders are almost great simplifiers who can cut through argument, debate, and doubt to offer a solution everybody can understand. With this quote, a very good morning to everyone gathered here. I welcome you all to the annual Maria Philip Memorial Intra-Collegiate Debate Competition. I also welcome our beloved chairman, Professor J. Philip Sir, our director, Professor Neelappan Sir, and also our vice president, C.P. Ravindranathan Sir. Xavier Institute of Management and Entrepreneurship. XIME is one of India's leading business schools with fully residential campuses in Bangalore, Kochi, and Chennai. Founded in the year 1991 by a group of accomplished academicians and public-spirited men, the institute today is recognized for its state-of-the-art infrastructure and proficient faculty. Professor J. Philip, former director, IIM Bangalore, has founded, nurtured, and developed the institution, and XIME continues to grow under his able leadership. XIME's journey of growth is a saga of milestones and continued success. Over the years, XIME has grown in the national rankings and currently features in the top 25 B schools in India. The flagship PGDM program is AICTE approved and accepts a total of 420 students across all three campuses. Introducing the person who is the sole reason behind XIME. Born in Changanassery, Kerala on April 9, 1964, Maria got her ICSE education from Laurentor Convent, Ranchi in 1980. She did her higher secondary schooling at Convent of Jesus and Mary, New Delhi, and went on to do her BA Honours in Psychology from Jesus and Mary College, New Delhi. A born leader, Maria was an excellent orator and an organizer too. Though she was studious, she was an equally active participant in extracurricular activities as well. She was the head girl at Loreto School, Ranchi, games captain at Convent of Jesus and Mary School, and secretary of debating club at Jesus and Mary College. The crowning glory for Maria was when she was elected as the most popular girl at the All India Cultural Festival Montage at Jesus and Mary College in 1984. Having been always passionate about human resource management, she decided to pursue her master's program in personnel management in the Madras School of Social Work. Unfortunately, during her final year, she was called to the God's abode on 30th September 1986, shattering all her dreams of contributing to the development of the society. Maria was the inspiration behind her father in the founding of XIME. Moving on to introduce our panelists for the day. First, we have Lakshmi Sawant, HR Global Business Partner and Cluster Head India, SCA, ANZ and Africa ABB India Limited. HR professional with 20 plus years of experience in various organizations, primarily into HR business partnering, HR consulting, influencing and coaching business leaders, executing and enabling organizational changes, leadership development, mergers and acquisitions, talent management, organizational development in a highly metrics organization. Currently working with ABB as hub HR business partner for South Asia, Middle East and Africa for one of the business divisions. Ma'am is also formerly GM HR at Schneider Electric. Next, we have our second panelist, Anjana KR, Global Head, Talent Acquisition for BFSI at Tata Consultancy Services Limited. Having 20 plus years experience in human resources and worked extensively in talent management, talent development, talent engagement, HR process, and design consulting in various leadership and consultant roles. Ma'am is also a former member of NHRD Bangalore Committee. Next, we have Jayant Narayanan Sir, entrepreneur and an author. Sir is a managing director of HO Food Services Private Limited, QSR chain, which is the Mani's Dum Biryani. Director of Radio Recognition Solutions and Codmo Solutions. Author of Secret Sauce and Startup Your Restaurant. and was also a former General Secretary at NHRD Bangalore. We welcome you, sir, and we welcome you, ma'am. I now request Professor Ramesh Ranjan, sir, to speak a few words.
Thank you, Srikita. Respected Chairman, our Vice Chairman, Director, the judges, and all the students who are participating over here. It's a great pleasure to welcome all of you all on behalf of Xavier Institute of Management, Bangalore, to this nostalgic program, the Maria Philip Memorial Debate Intercollegiate Competition. It's nostalgic for the college and also for me, because I was a classmate or a college mate of Maria Philip, having studied together at the Madras School of Social Work way back in 85, 86. It was very unfortunate that Maria met with an accident and is no more with us. But her spirit is the source behind this college, as Srikrita just mentioned, and it is my privilege that for the second year in a row, I'm able to coordinate this program and bring in some of the best of the talents in Karnataka for a very eventful program. All of us have been struck by this pandemic, and the world has almost come to a standstill. And it's also showed that even the most powerful man in the world is not spared. The President of America is also afflicted by COVID. So it is befitting that during this time, we have a very interesting topic to understand how our response has been to this COVID-19 and how the government's policies have helped the economy or otherwise. We have had some very interesting discussions in the past, and it has been a very successful program. And I look forward to very active engagement and interesting debates, and wish all the participants all the very best. And over to you, Srikita. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I'd now like to announce the topic for today's debate, which is government's economic measures to deal with the impact of COVID-19 have so far been effective. I repeat, government's economic measures to deal with the impact of COVID-19 have so far been effective. Moving on to the rules of the competition, all the participants please note. Only one team is allowed to participate from each B school. Each team will have 2 members, out of which at least one must be a girl. One speaker will speak for the motion for 4 minutes, while the other will speak against the motion for 4 minutes, and there will be a warning bell after 3.5 minutes. There will not be any cross rebuttal rounds. Negative marking for exceeding the time limit of 4 minutes. Teams should not wear the uniforms or blazer, which indicates the name of the institution, nor mention the name of their institution during the speech. Participants are required to wait in the waiting room at least 10 minutes before their scheduled time. And also all the participants are requested just to introduce yourself by saying your name and not any of your college details. So these are the prizes for the regional rounds. With the view of having 18 entries from Bangalore, we will shortlist 4 teams which will go to the finale. In the regional rounds, the first place will bag 10,000, the second place will bag 5,000, the third place will bag 2,000, and the fourth place will bag a certificate. I wish all the participants very good luck, and yes. I now announce the opening of the annual Maria Philip debate competition.
Srikita, you'll have to ask them to all log off, except the 2 participants who are.
I request all the participants right now to log out, apart from the first team coming up.
All right, yes. Good afternoon, panel. I'm Priyanka Prabhakaran, and I will be speaking for the motion, and my partner?
I'm Dhanush Jagdish, and I will be speaking against the motion.
Okay. May I have the permission of the panel? Can we proceed?
Yes. Please, Priyanka, you can proceed.
Thank you. The pandemic has left the policymakers across the globe with immense uncertainty on economic and healthcare fronts. Given this challenge, I believe the economic measures undertaken by the government of India have been effective. With about 90% of the workforce represented by the unorganized sector, the government was ought to protect the people at the bottom of the pyramid. This was reflected by the government's swift move in taking measures to ensure the health and safety of the people. On 26 March 2020, the finance minister announced 1.7 trillion rupees as relief package for the well-being of poor due to distress caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Let me throw some light on the measures undertaken by the government. Considering the population of India and anticipating the spike of cases, anytime 175,000 healthcare sector professionals were trained under the MSDE skill ecosystem for isolation and quarantine duties. And due to this very fact, India is at 84.34% recovery rate as of 5th October 2020. Which is much better in comparison to 63.5% of the United States, which stands third in world population and has world-class healthcare facility. Considering the fact that healthcare workers are at a high risk of contracting the virus, the government announced medical insurance cover of 5 million rupees per healthcare worker, thereby financially securing their expenses that may arise due to contraction of the virus. The government has undertaken various measures to indemnify the anguish brought by pay cuts and job losses. One of these is the allowance by Employee Provident Fund Organization for withdrawal of 75% of the account balance for working class. The government has also undertaken initiatives to reskill employees to be able to reroute the workforce to a different sector with increasing demand or with predicted increase in demand. Vande Bharat mission saw 13,85,670 returnees. Swadesh initiative aims at mapping the employment data of the returnees. Now, this data is in turn assimilated to Atmanirbhar skilled employee-employer mapping system to leverage Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. This aims to bridge the gap between resource and employment requirements. The government has tried to balance between people and businesses, and one such initiative is to waive off the interest on loans up to 2 crores during 6-month moratorium period, thereby empowering retail and MSME borrowers who are in turn key drivers of Indian economy. Manufacturing PMI for September 2020 is at 56.8 in comparison to 51.4 in September 2019, indicating about a 5% increase and instilling confidence on a sustaining growth. On a positive note, GST collection in September stood at 95,480 crore rupees, which is 4% increase from a year ago. This increase in revenue indicates an optimistic outlook and reinstates normalcy in business operations. To conclude, I stand by the government's optimism on bottom-up shaped recovery through their measures. Although the present situation looks flimsy, in my opinion, the economic policies are structured with a sustaining long-term vision that ensures an enduring economic growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. Dhanush, you can start now.
Good afternoon. At the stroke of midnight on 24th of March 2020, a nation of 1.3 billion people was brought to a standstill. We witnessed as the pandemic painted colors of destruction on the canvas of time with slow cues and strokes. That wasn't the first time that mankind was brought to its knees by an invisible juggernaut of nature. The bubonic plague, the Black Death, the Spanish flu, Asian flu, SARS, and so many others have killed hundreds of millions of people in history. There was no limit for red flags and warning signs. The next pandemic was inevitable. But did any of us bother to prepare in a meaningful way? No, especially we Indians have had this proclivity to being reactionary in our measures, and seldom have we been precautionary. Yuddha kale shastra abhyasam is a Sanskrit axiom that truly reflects the Indian spirit. And what is the result of this all? The biggest democracy in the history of mankind has failed its people in the face of COVID-19. India will be the worst hit large economy by COVID-19 as per IMF. IMF also says that India's GDP will contract by 4.5%, which will be the first economic contraction in the last 40 years. Large rates of unemployment and loss of more than 6 months of income has practically mired half the population back into poverty, reversing all the gains that we have had since 3 decades of liberalization. What exasperates this situation is that government finances are strained, the tax revenues are crashing, and India's relatively stable debt to GDP ratio is threatening to hit 90%. Today's motion demands us to address the economic measures of the government and how effective they've been so far. But what falls under the ambit of economic measures, and how justified are we in looking at them in silos? Do we even have the right to say how effective they are if we do not have a standard to hold them to? We cannot simply emulate measures which have been taken up by other countries. Mumbai is home to both the largest slums in the country and the richest people in the country. Juxtaposition and diversity makes the problems of India unique to India, and unique problems require unique solutions. India has the lowest doctor-patient ratio in the world. Let that stat sink in, ladies and gentlemen. And we have failed the medical community miserably when we needed them the most. The government claims to have no data on the number of doctors who have died on COVID duties. Protect the bottom of the pyramid, they said. Hence, Garib Kalyan Yojana got an allocation of 68,820 crores, aimed to benefit 42 crore Indians. But put those numbers together and you have 1,638 rupees per Garib. That is less than 3 days of wages when the lockdown has lasted months. Skill India campaign got 1,500 crores, came in to benefit 40 crore people. That reduces to 37.5 rupees per person. You can't even buy a proper meal with that money. I can dissect such numbers all day long, ladies and gentlemen, but what use are numbers which are dressed up and just on paper when the execution remains as flawed as ever? The biggest constitution in the world has the poorest law enforcement to support it. This catastrophic failure needs to be addressed, and these self-deceptions that we have all been conditioned to live with need to be addressed. In conclusion, I would like to say that the government must prioritize public health or national economy to salvage at least one at the cost of the other. Otherwise, a failure in attempted balancing act.
Hear that sound? That shutting down of shops, that layoff email, and that sound of dreams shattering, that and much more has happened due to the health and economic crisis that COVID-19 brought in. It was also the alarm clock that indicated that the government needed to step up and be the government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Who are these people, you may ask? Well, it's you and me. It also includes the street vendors who had no income during almost 3 months of the nationwide lockdown. But they were allocated 10,000 each to set up their business again. The people also include the farmers of our country who have now been covered by the Kisan credit card for loans on as low as 2% interest rates and flexible payment schemes. It also comprises of the 22 lakh health workers who are now insured for up to 50 lakh rupees by the government. It includes the women of 83 million families that are below poverty line and are covered under the Ujjwala scheme, who have received the LPG cylinders between April and June 2020. It includes the middle class, who has been granted 6 months of interest-free moratorium period on all their loans up to 2 crore rupees. Well, I ask you, were these not effective policies to help the population navigate the COVID-19 crisis? I believe they were very effective and extremely helpful to not one, but all economic stratas of our society. What makes me even happier about these economic schemes is how the government not only focused on major monetary and fiscal schemes, but also talked about the nitty-gritties. It was not all about the repo rate and the reverse repo rate or the 20 lakh crore economic policy, but they were also talking about the employee provident funds of people who work in organizations where 90% people earn only up to 15,000 rupees. They contributed to those employee provident funds. They also ensured that payments which are due to the MSMEs from the government's behalf were released within 45 days. And states like UP, MP, Rajasthan, and Gujarat brought in amendments in their labor laws to help migrant workers preserve their employment. But I ask you, is a government policy all about handouts and concessions? No, right? That is why I feel we must applaud the quick thinking of our government of providing masks, medication, and PPEs to other countries and generate employment even in a global crisis. Also, I remember Thomas Sowell said that economic policies need to be analyzed in terms of incentives they create. So let's do just that. Let's talk about Pradhan
30
Mantri
seconds
Matsya
more.
Sampada Yojana that allocates almost 20,000 crore rupees to develop marine and inland fisheries to take advantage of the enormous coastline of our country. We should also look at the revised definition of MSMEs that help them expand without losing benefits. Also, education is the key to economic development, right? So we have the eVidya program broadcasting the curriculum on television channels so that underprivileged students do not lose out. That is why I say that our government is fighting tooth and nail to bring us out of this situation, this economic crisis created by COVID. And the government is working in tandem, the union as well as the state, and I am in support of their policies. Thank you.
Okay. You have finished ahead of time.
Thank you, Shika.
Thank you.
Am I perfectly audible and visible, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So can anyone know when can I start?
Yeah, you can start now.
All right. So good morning, everyone. Respected judges and my dear friends, I'm Ansh Bhatt, and I'm probably going to speak against the topic, that is effectiveness of the government economic measures and policies in the light of COVID. So what happened? You're probably not able to see what I am doing and only able to hear the noise that I'm creating. This is what is exactly happening with the government policies in our country. I want to ask you, can you see the impact these policies are making in the society, on the ground? Can you? Now think about the plight of migrant workers in our country. There are 4 crore migrant laborers. Now think about any one of them. He probably lives in some village in UP. He has a family of 4. He has no savings. He probably has an elderly mother too. Now what does this person want from the government? The government provides him with an Arthik package, with a 20 lakh crore package. And what is inside the package for him? Probably 5 kg of wheat, 5 kg of rice, and some pulses for the next 3 months. And even if he is lucky in some case, her woman might get rupees 500 in her Jan Dhan account. But I want to ask you, do you really think this much would suffice? Do you really think this much would be okay for that person to survive for the next coming years and next coming months? So what will this person do? This person would probably go and find some Manrega work for himself. So I want to ask this basic question, why the government of India reduced the Manrega funding to 61,000 crore and then later revised it to 1 lakh crore? And why did they reduce the per day income of these Manrega people from 210 to 182 and then later revised it to 202 again? Why this fickle-minded approach by the government of India? Okay, now let's talk about that industry in our country where 60% of people are employed. Yes, you are right. I'm talking about the agriculture industry. Think about that industry. You know, one thing, the productivity of this industry has been on a rise from the past 3 years. So one must assume, okay, that the productivity is increasing. The level of income of farmers should also increase. But no, my dear friend, this isn't the case here. You have been mistaken. The productivity is on a decrease from the past few years. The situation has got that much worse and that a Manrega worker probably earns the same what an agriculture worker earns. So why would a farmer probably continue with his farming practices where so many external factors are also employed? Why would he continue? And do you know what impact it will create? It will probably lead to you and me dying. We will be dying because of either of scarcity of food or either because the food that is available in the market that is priced way too high for the people like you and me to purchase. Okay, let's talk about that formal sector in our economy where the middle class is working. Now, what the government has done for the government is simply asking the private companies not to do the layoffs. So does it make a huge difference in the lives of those people who have already got unemployed in the times of COVID? Now, what does I really want from the government? I want the government to bring in Arthik Package 2.0, some real package, some real money into the hands of the poor, where the poor feel connected to the system, to the economy, where the poor feel that they are a part of the system and the government thinks about them. Some real money to be given. When that being said, that should not be at the cost of disinvestment from the public companies that the government is doing right now. That should not be at the cost of that, because the public companies were started with a motto to serve the poorest and the poorest of the country. And with that being said, I want to highlight the fact here about the implementation, what I began my speech with. If the implementation of all these policies should be done in a way that the state and the center are coordinated, they should work as a one single unit, a one single oiled machine. When all that is done, I believe our country should once again surface over this crisis and triumph over this crisis and emerge as a winner. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ash.
The novel coronavirus, as we all know it today, has affected lakhs of people globally. With the death rates increasing every single minute as we talk, our Prime Minister Narendra Damodar Modi announced a stimulus package for India worth rupees 20 lakh crore. Close to 10% of GDP, the package did not appear to leave any major sphere untouched. Narendra Modi brought out the fiscal artillery to complement the RBI's monetary ballast, thus putting India firmly in the league of biggies that have gone all out against the virus. Dubbed as Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, this COVID relief package puts bold reforms at the heart of Modi's stated plans, focusing on land, labor, liquidity, and laws, the four basic pillars of economic recovery. And thus, I strongly believe in the government's economic reforms and will be speaking for the motion. These reforms were needed and has started to take India into a different trajectory, as without them, India is stifled. I Swaraj Dev will tell you how. Let numbers talk. On March 27, 2020, the RBI, along with the Government of India, announced a 75 basis points and repo rates were cut to counter the economic slowdown caused by COVID-19 pandemic, thus standing at a 4.4% against a 5.15% earlier. The reverse repo rate had been cut by 90 basis points to 4% to make it unattractive for banks to passively deposit funds with RBI and instead lend it to productive sectors. Also, notingly, banks were given a 3-month moratorium on all loans, and the stunning 3.7 lakh crore liquidity injection has taken place. The recent high frequency indicators suggest that the economic activity has started to normalize to pre-COVID levels during the last 3 months, which corresponds to the second quarter of the financial year. For starters, the Purchasing Managers Index came in at 56.8%. GST collections were up by 4% on a year-on-year basis to rupees 95,480 crores, while e-way bills were at 50.2 million until 28 September, which happens to be the highest figure since March. Moreover, the Indian railway freight was up by 15.33% on a year-on-year basis. 29 million people work under the NREGA or the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which was highest since May, and power demand was up by 4.8%. These numbers indicate an improvement in the level of economic activity. The interesting point is that agriculture sector continues to do exceedingly well, and a major reason is that a bulk of the policy support was directed precisely towards the bottom one-third of the population, a bulk of which happens to be in the rural area. The finance minister has already indicated that the government will not hesitate to spend if needed. Most importantly, Modi's government has not been foolish enough to reverse decades of painful
30 minutes more.
reform
30
and did
seconds.
not force the central bank to start monetizing its debt. To conclude, Modi's economic reform has been far from exceptional. So the question lies in, how has this government proven so astute at this moment? Perhaps it's because the Prime Minister himself is something of a fiscal hawk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just
Yes, Ankita.
cross-checking if I am visible and audible to everyone.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. The recently released quarterly GDP growth numbers for the first quarter of 2020 should alarm us all. The 23.9% contraction in India compares with a drop of 12.4% in Italy and 9.5% in the United States, two of the most COVID-affected advanced countries. And here, my friend Swaraj has been making tall talks of how India's COVID-19 economic measures have been successful. With these hard-hitting thoughts, I, Ankita Parekh, disagree and stand against the motion. India is even worse off than these comparisons suggest. The government's 20 lakh crore COVID-19 package impacts only about 1% of the GDP as opposed to the claim of the 10%. About half of the package amount covers fiscal measures that had previously already been announced by the RBI. The government's reluctance to do more today seems partly because it wants to conserve resources for a possible future stimulus. This strategy in itself is self-defeating. To add to this, the 20 lakh crore package was more beneficial in medium term over 3 years than the short term and immediate requirements. It is too liquidity centric, while the lingering problem with the Indian economy is not of liquidity but of demand, my friends. As seen with the COVID-19 package, the government is sensitive about fiscal deficit, which disturbs the credit ratings, having another set of cascading effects. The stimulus package advertised by the government is a desperate trick being played upon desperate people with money that does not exist. The 5.2 lakh crore rupees aimed at bringing down borrowing rates was a farce, as there were no borrowers during COVID. All the promises made to inject money into the system are designed to derive the maximum political mileage from a gullible public that knows little or nothing about economics or banking. Around 62,000 crore rupees are going as advance tax and PF rebates to people who don't need it because they don't have jobs. And for the money promised to those who are suffering, such as the migrant workers, the old man eating off dustbins and sweeping milk off roads, is rupees 3,500 crore, a meager 0.175% of the whole package. And even this is not given in cash but kind, and that too only for the 2 months after the announcements made. The government seems to have worked a lot on their rates and loans, as Swaraj, my friend, suggested. But taking new loans with no certainty of sales is the last thing the Mango Man or the Aam Aadmi has in mind. Survival comes first, post which comes investments. So what could the government have done? On the resource front, India could borrow more without scaring the bond markets by making saleable lands under them ready for sale. Turning to government spending, the Manreka, as Swaraj spoke, should be replenished as needed. More direct cash transfers to the poorest households, especially in urban areas that do not have access to Manrega, is warranted. As the various payment moratoriums come to an end, a variety of structures
30
should
seconds more.
to help debtors and claimants restructure obligations, including having unpayable amounts written off. India needs strong growth, my friends, not just to satisfy the aspirations of the youth, but to keep our unfriendly neighbors at bay. No doubt the government and its bureaucrats are working hard as always, but they need to be frightened out of their complacency and into meaningful activity. If there is a silver lining in the awful GDP numbers, hopefully it is that, and hopefully we will resurrect again. Thank you. That is my time.
Thank you, Ankita and Swaraj.
Thank you, Ankita and can start.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Parisha Purohit, and I would like to state 2 points stating the facts that the economic measures taken by the government have so far been effective. The COVID-19 epidemic has been the first and foremost human disaster in 2020. Well, this is just about May, when we had 1 lakh cases, of which 40% were recovered, and still the government was ready with 3,000 plus hospitals, 7,000 plus care units, and approximately 3 lakh isolation beds. Well, the number states for themselves. But still, the Union Ministry of Health have themselves stated that India has been managed to keep up a good fight against COVID as compared to any other developing or developed nation. Well, now my opponent here would try to pinpoint on the slowing economy of our government. Well, let me just tell you that the Modi government and RBI are already trying to cushion an economy that was slowing even before the coronavirus outbreak. For the matter of fact, let me just state that the government has announced a 20 lakh crore relief package, which is 10% of GDP. And the RBI's cut in interest rate and liquidity boosting measure had total to 3.2% of GDP. Well, this package is announced to make India self-reliant, and it will focus on 4 Ls: the land, labor, liquidity, and law. It is going to cater to various sections which consist of cottage industry, MSME, laborers, middle class, and poor. And why not? Because the poor is the most affected section of Indian economy. Well, what has government done to make them stable? The government has released a 1.7 lakh crore under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, and this is going to benefit 80 crore poor, and it will provide them with 5 kg of free wheat or rice and 1 kg of pulse. Well, under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, the 60 crore plus beneficiaries were covered by 36 states and UTs. And this is not just it. The 34,800 crore of financial assistance were provided to 39 crore beneficiaries, which consisted of women, poor senior citizens, disabled, and farmers. Let's talk about the MSME here, because MSME sector is the backbone of our economy and the second highest employer after agriculture. Well, what has government done to boost the business environment and to gain the consumer confidence? Well, they have provided collateral-free loans of up to 3 lakh crore, which will enable 45 lakh units to restart their work and save millions of jobs. The government did not stop here. They have provided 20,000 crore to fishermen under PM Fish Resource Scheme, which will also give the employment to 55 lakh people. Well, for me, this is a big number. And while we're talking about the employment, why not talk about the women employment? The women are enrolled in startup jobs and root level jobs. Not just this, they are also enrolled to make the PPE kits and masks. Why? So that they can just get a source of living. While we're talking and covering all the aspects, how can we forget the healthcare workers? Because the healthcare workers have been providing their selfless service to all of us. What has government done for them? Well, the government has announced a health insurance scheme worth 5 million to all the doctors, paramedics, ASHA care workers, ward boys, etc. And now, to battle the economic crisis, government will be launching a 35,000 crore package. Well, I would like to really conclude with this, that I believe that the essence of good government is trust, and India has surely won trust of millions. Even after being a developing economy, India is successfully standing as the 5th largest economy of the world. With the numbers and data, I am quite convinced that the government is taking the measures are quite effective. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, you can start.
Am I audible right now? Sir, I would just like to put a concern. There's a power cut, so I might not be very clear. So I have to switch to outside. I'm going to start, but just please bear with me, right? So I'll start, right? Right.
Go ahead.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Krishna, and I would like to speak against the point that my counterpart spoke upon. So after 14 hours of Janata curfew, India went into actual lockdown on March 24th. At that time, we had around 500 confirmed cases and less than 10 deaths. Well, the sudden lockdown actually had a severe impact on the low-wage minimum workers, also the migrants who were working over here. With no savings or help from the government, these people started facing severe hardship. Also food insecurities, which led them to walk hundreds of miles to their villages. So you see, even though the government tried to mitigate the risk by providing the rations, but it was done only after 45 days. Also, there has been instances recorded where the people fled from the quarantine centers because they were simply not unhygienic. Also, they were overcrowded. Also, the scheme that my counterpart spoke about, the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, which is supposed to be of 1.75 lakh crore, it actually allocates funding to the existing budget or allows user with an option of early withdrawal from their social benefits. So it nowhere provides any liquidity to the person in need or the poor families. To tell you a fact, it actually took a lot of time for the bureaucrats to come up with the proper solution because there were a lot of confusion among themselves. And when the first package was actually announced, the finance minister simply stated that they were told to act upon the situation rather than being part of the decision-making process. Also, the economic reforms that the government came up with is simply inefficient. For example, the Atmanirbhar Bharat package, which is supposed to be 10% of the GDP, the 20 lakh crore package, it actually provides monetary interventions through liquidity over a period of time to boost the economy in the future. But what about the gap that we currently have in our system? Also, it may seem like ages now, but in the month of February, when there was no pandemic, the finance minister passed an escape clause, which allows India to run at higher fiscal deficit than the legal mandate, simply because we had the lowest GDP in a decade and the highest unemployment rate in the last 4 decades. Also, there was a huge tax collection gap that we had. To tell you, I would like to point upon the scheme from the Atmanirbhar Bharat, the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. This was even covered by my partner, which provides 55 lakh jobs to the fishermen. So its total comprises of 20,000 crore. And it is aimed to double the fishery export at 1 lakh crore. Now, this scheme was actually passed in the June 2019 and got accepted in January 2020 as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Also, if you dig in deeper, this is more of a self-investment scheme where a fisherman can take a loan up to 5 years. So what about the ones who have not been fishing during the times of Corona? What about them? There's no relief packages for them. Yes, the government did put on the alert emails for the citizens right from the month of January. But let me tell you, it took almost 1.5 to 2 months to ban all the international travels. Yes, there has been hospitals being set up, the institutes coming in and government helping in. But the testing rate at which this was done was super low. It was 4,100 per million. That means the global average in the June stood at 29,000. Also, as per the Ministry of Health data, over 100,000 to 200,000 children have missed their daily vaccine.
30 seconds.
Because too much over the Corona and see. So what this, I would like to conclude, yes, the government did put on a measure, but they were pretty late. Had they been implemented a little bit earlier, the risks had been mitigated. Also, the schemes that are presented to the public are more of a beautified version of it. They contain flaws within which needs to be addressed because we are dealing with lives over here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, would the judges want to share a few words about your experience? Anything you want to say? 2 words from Lakshmi, Jayant, and Anjana. Whatever sequence.
So I think, yeah, one of the, yeah, sure. I'll go.
Yeah, please.
First of all, I would like to thank you, Ranjan, for inviting us to this kind of arena. It's a wonderful change in the lockdown scenario, I would say, to listen to so many students and, of course, on their views on the government and what the actions have been. As a consensus between Jayant, Lakshmi, and myself, we had mentioned, some of the other couple of 2 participants, Tuleshwari and Arvind, they did exceptionally well. Right. And because their partners chose to read and probably were not up to the mark, they were actually disqualified. So maybe one comment which is common from all the 3 of us would be to pass on this message to the colleges, saying that, because of one person not really adhering to the standards that is expected, the entire team got disqualified. So right. I think that would be definitely one comment, but otherwise it was a phenomenal experience and a great change. Thank you for the opportunity, Ranjan, and thanks to the whole team at SIME, and thanks to the chairman, vice chairman, and president. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anjana. Lakshmi, you want to say
Hey,
something?
thanks, Ranjan. Thanks for having us here. I think for me it was a bit of a learning experience, and to tell you frankly, I myself read through what the government policies and things were there last night, just to be sure of we are aware of things, and just to validate the content part of it, because that was one important criteria for us to judge. So it's a good learning for us, and thanks for having us over. It's a good experience, and I think it was well set up event without any disturbance, and we've just managed our time very well. Thanks to the chairman, the vice chairman, and the president, and thanks again. Would love to really be over here for many more such events. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi. Jan?
Yeah, hey, Ranjan, again, thanks for having me on this event. I'm glad I'm not a student now. I think the confidence levels, the communication, and the knowledge these guys have is just phenomenal. So I'm glad I'm not studying with them now.
Right. Yeah. So thank you very much, Jayant, Anjana, and Lakshmi. First of all, for having spent almost 4 hours, right, of your busy schedule. I know how tough it is managing this time off. And really appreciate your support for the students and to the college. And I think we all enjoyed it. And I think your judgment is more or less in sync with what I also felt, right? And once again, thanks to all of you. Wish it was good times we could have had you physically on the campus so that you can see our campus, meet chairman and all our senior faculty. But I'm sure good times is going to be around. So we will call you again for some other occasion and look forward to your continued support. To chairman, to vice chairman, to director and others, thank you for having sat through this and given us the support. And last but not least, to all the volunteers who made this happen seamlessly.